Welcome back. Well, it's not election eve yet, but it is the last show before the election for Credlin. And I know it's been 5 official weeks of campaigning, but really we've been in an election and on election footing for many, many months. So joining me now for his take on the official and unofficial campaign and what we might expect on Saturday night, Sky News political contributor Chris Uhlmann, who I might say will join us on the panel out of Sydney on Saturday night as well. And you've been around plenty of campaigns like me. I mentioned this before with Cameron Milner, and I'm going to ask you about this as well. Have we now ended up in a place where truth doesn't matter anymore, that the big lie repeated over and over and over again is going to win elections?
Yeah, Peter, I guess the one that stood out to me was the $600 billion claim, which clearly had a lot of traction for the Labor Party and was married with, he cuts, you pay. And it worked for them because they used it over and over again. The Prime Minister used it, was using all their advertising campaign. And when you research that and where it came from, well, it didn't come from anywhere credible at all. In fact, it came from the Smart Energy Council, which is a lobby group for wind and solar agencies that was done on the back of an envelope. And even if when you went to their press release, what it said was their costings were between $116 billion and $600 billion. Well, look, if you've got basically a $500 billion gap in your numbers, that shows that that's not modelling, that's propaganda. That's what it always was. And that's where the Labor Party figure came from. So there was that one. And then there was the complete inability of the government to actually even admit the fact that the $275 cut to your electricity prices was never going to be met. And that was across years. So, yeah, I found both of those things terribly disturbing. I know that we've seen, misleading statements in campaigns before, and I'm sure that people can come up with a host of them over the years. But I thought that this was a pretty low point.
Yeah, Sarah Ison, all credit to her, she dug up some of the background of the Smart Energy Council. But that caused me to then go and look at all the modelling, or the so-called modelling. It wasn't modelling at all. It was a Gen Cost report and a little bit else from AEMO, and that was behind this big claim. And the fact that they're a lobby group, but they needed that out there because Dutton had ruled out any of the cuts that Labor had claimed. Nothing was going to change in terms of the forward estimates. So they had to then have a furphy out there. Well, there has to be secret cuts because he needs this $600 billion. Again, that's the lie. But when it has a little bit of credibility because they can link it across to nuclear, and punters know enough out there that he's got a nuclear plan, that's then been pushed out heavily into letterboxes and in social media feeds. And I am staggered that it wasn't up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, until this stuff appeared in The Australian, that the coalition did anything about contesting this lie.
Yeah, it was interesting that in the third debate on Channel 9, the Prime Minister didn't repeat it when he was pressed on it. But then when we got to the fourth one on Channel 7, he did repeat it. So, it just never left the atmosphere. And I think the other big one that the coalition's got to worry about for several election campaigns in a row now is the whole Mediscare campaign. It seems if it wasn't working, they wouldn't be using it. We know that. So they need to find a way to combat that, and they've tried everything up to and including the fact that they want to give more money than the government most of the time now to Medicare. That's clearly an issue for them that will have to be addressed before the next campaign.
All right, just quickly, I'm going to put you on the spot. I want to talk about Tony Blair, but what do you think will be the result on Saturday night?
An Albanese Labor government, but in minority, I think. And the measure that I'll judge the coalition on now after a dreadful campaign is, can they get over 65 seats? They need to put themselves into a position where they're within reach of government the next time round. They need to drive Labor into a position where it needs to negotiate with more than one group on the floor of the House of Representatives, so that the government becomes very difficult indeed. And it could be a good time to be in opposition if that's the case, because if we see the destruction of wealth, which I think will follow, the kind of energy policies that will come out of Greens, Teals and Labor, then we get to the next election, I think that the people may well and truly be ready for a big change.
Well, I might add too, the last time we had a hung parliament, I was there, Tony Abbott, first-term Labor government taken to the wall. We had 73 seats. So I tell you what, I'd be disappointed if the Libs didn't get to 65.